Hey, yo, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we have got a great one we're looking at today. As part of our Breeders' Cup Handicapping series, we're going to look at the Breeders' Cup Turf. And this promises to be an outstanding race with all those great European shippers. So let's get into it. So let's look at the turf. It's running a mile and a half on the hillside turf course. And what that means is they're going to start on a downhill incline very briefly at the bottom of the hillside turf course before they cross over the dirt onto the regular turf course. Anybody who has some insight into that type of race at Santa Anita, please let me know. I'm not familiar with it. I would guess there'll be a little bit of an edge to horses who want to be on the engine early. And to that end, let's note also that Get Smokin' has scratched and probably would have been the pace setter in this race. I think that'll now fall to Balladeer, who we'll talk about shortly. First one we want to look at is Shariar. And you note this one has over $8 million in earnings. So there's plenty of back class here. Problem is the last race was nothing to write home about. Finished up the track. And prior to that, in the Dubai Shima, had a pretty good fifth. It's no sin to lose to Equinox, and Westover is a hell of a good horse as well. The question is whether this one can jack it back up again. Has been off since August. Has had plenty of time to be fresh. Uh, you know the back class this one has would tell me that probably could factor in this race. I'd like to see a price. I don't want to see anything lower than 50 to 1 to use. I'm not sure that this one is enough to win this race, but I think is one that perhaps you can use underneath in the exotics. Onesto is a French import and finished, had a good third in the Arc de Triomphe last time. But as was reported to me from one of our subscribers who had some inside intel about the Arc, the ground was extremely soft that day at Longchamp. And if you look back at Onesto's record, you see most of the better efforts were on soft turf. So you do wonder about that. You look at that race in Tokyo in the Japan Cup that was on firm and didn't fare terribly well. If you look at the Irish Champion Stakes, which was on good, which is obviously a little firmer than soft, didn't run terribly well. So you do have to wonder if soft turf is something that this horse prefers. If that's the case, then you'd have to say that this is going to be a really tall order for Onesto in this race. And probably the odd one out in the Europeans. That because I don't want to invest in a horse who's looks to be surface dependent, and for that reason I'm going to let Onesto go. Gold Phoenix is a California turf horse and is very versatile. Can go to a mile and all the way up to a mile and a half or longer. The thing about Gold Phoenix that I don't like more than anything else is the inconsistency. This horse can throw a clunker in there very unexpectedly. I've seen it do it multiple times, or can come in with a big race with a huge closing kick. His best isn't good enough in here, I don't think. At 30 to 1, that's an excellent price, and you do get Juan Hernandez. I could see using this one under in the exotics, but that's the extent of it. I don't think on his best day, Gold Phoenix could beat the top horses in this race. Bolshoi Ballet we saw earlier in the Sword Dancer and hasn't run since then. That effort, while I anticipated that Bolshoi Ballet was going to win that race, but it was more conditional on the vulnerability of others in the field, most notably Stone Age. Pioneering Spirit was stepping up in class. Soldier Rising just doesn't win. So I thought that it was pretty clear that Bolshoi Ballet, if the form was decent, was going to win the race. And he did. However, he only got an 89 Brisnet figure. The turf was kind of boggy that day at Saratoga, as it was throughout most of the meet because of all the rain. And if you go back and look, in the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth on soft turf at Ascot, didn't do terribly well. And if you look at the efforts prior to that, this one was running in ungraded and grade 3 stakes. So the form to me, the class-wise, I don't know that is necessarily there. You can go back to the Breeders' Cup Turf where she ran at Del Mar and did okay, where Broom finished second, who we'll talk about. But may have been a better horse back then. This is 2 years removed from that, and perhaps that wasn't the as good a field as you've got here. So for those reasons, I just don't think, I mean, part of me says, okay, you can look and the same training pattern is there as it was a couple of years ago. Ran at Belmont, got an 89, and then came back and run a monster. But I'm not willing to bet on that. I think this is a lot tougher field than he's faced, and consequently, I'm going to toss. Auguste Rodin is a really pretty special horse and a pretty important one for Europe. He's got Japanese breeding, yet he's been running in Europe and won the Derby. You can't do much better than that. But here's the thing with Auguste Rodin. When he's on, he's awesome, but he can disappear. The King George and Queen Elizabeth, you look, he was 126 lengths behind in that race. Just didn't want to run. And then you go in the 2,000 guineas, and this basically the same thing happened. He just decided he didn't want to run that day. So he can throw in a clunker. You note interspersed between there, you've got grade 1 wins. Most notably in the Irish Champion Stakes, he ran a really solid race and just put that field away. So which one shows up? I don't know. We'll have to see how he's training. If there's any indication that he's going to be off, then maybe he's one that you don't want to touch. But Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore, you have to believe if he's over here, they were expecting he's going to run a good race. Most notably, they had Paddington for the mile entered, and Aidan O'Brien said it would depend how he's training coming up to the race, and they didn't bring him over. So I'll have to believe they think Auguste Rodin is in good shape, has had some time to be fresh. He's run well off the bench, and he's also thrown a clunker like he did in the 2,000 guineas. So we'll have to see. But he's a pretty good horse, and he's one that he's better than pretty good, that you have to absolutely consider. As we noted, Get Smokin' has scratched, and that does muddy up the pace picture a little bit. Broom is one that has, as we noted, a couple years ago at Del Mar, finished second in the turf. So obviously firm turf is something that this horse does like. You note he has been running on good to soft since the Breeders' Cup, and his results have been kind of checkered. He's been running mostly at long distance races, and the best he's been able to do is the third in the Doncaster Cup at 2 miles or 2.25 miles. And he was on the engine and tried to take him all the way and faded back. Have to believe firm turf is maybe what this one wants after all. So perhaps he can outrun the 30-1 price. The form isn't necessarily that good coming into this race, but if he gets on a surface that's more preferable to him, then perhaps he'll run better. I don't expect he's a win candidate, but could outrun his odds. And at 30-1, why not take a shot? So I could see using him underneath just for the price only. Up to the Mark is the American's best hope, I think, to win or at least to finish in the money. The Turf Mile at Keeneland was awesome. Just was a fantastic race to run down Master of the Season. It looked like he had the race locked up. That's coming off a long layoff. Now he's moving up to 1.5 miles, a distance he hasn't run before, but I'm not going to worry about that being by not this time. Ghost Zapper on the bottom. He should be able to get it. Second off the layup, I fully expect this one to run a big race. You go back to the Manhattan. If he could duplicate that, I think he has a very good chance in this race, and I don't see why he couldn't. The others have, the Europeans certainly have more glitz and maybe are a little more battle-tested class-wise. But I think this one has the talent to factor in this race. So up to the mark, I think you definitely want to use, but probably more under. And we'll just, for patriotism's sake, we'll hope for a win, but going to be kind of remote. Mostadaf is just an awesome horse. He can run on firm. He can run on soft. We're not worried about the surface. I'm not, at least. And saw this one run at Royal Ascot back in June in the Prince of Wales Stakes, and beat a really good field. Adayar and Luxembourg are both well thought of European horses, and then came back in the Juddmonte International and basically did what a good horse should do. He's got on the lead and just took him all the way. That was a pretty darn good field. Nashua and Paddington aren't any slouches either. So he's had plenty of time to be fresh. John Gosden does not bring them over unless he thinks he can win. See no reason why that we shouldn't consider Mostadaf the prime win candidate for this race. Adamo is a field filler to me, just isn't good enough. Have had a couple of instances this year where I thought this horse might rise to the occasion and is disappointed. I don't think that's the kind of form you need coming into this race. Runs from just off the pace, and in this type of race when the class level is raised, that's usually these type of horses founder. So I'll pass on Adamo. King of Steel is a grinder. He just wears you down. And at 1.5 miles, that would be a pretty good distance for him. I don't know that he has that big acceleration if necessary. He's just going to continue to grind along as he did in the Champion Stakes. And I also saw him do that back at Royal Ascot in the King Edward VII. He's a monster. He's a big horse. And he wins the contest in the paddock every time. He's just a beautiful specimen, but that's not winning races. You can see he has run some monster races. Look at that 127 class rating at Ascot in July. I think that's the highest figure I've ever seen. So Holcomb and Westovers must have been higher. So he's run at the top levels and performed very well. I think he's one we have to consider. The only thing I would say is, being a grinder, then I would think probably might need a little more pace than perhaps the others would. And that's the only thing I can think about it. I'm not sure he's necessarily going to get it here. That's really the only thing. I think he's one to consider, but I'm not sure that this is the best scenario for King of Steel, and I would consider him more for under than I would to win this. You get Frankie Dettori, Hall of Fame jockey, but just based on his running style and what I've seen, I think under is more likely. Balladeer, with the scratch of Get Smokin', is the pace of this race. I think that's pretty safe to say. The last race, the John Henry, ran pretty quick fractions early and just kept rolling. So this one's in really good form, but the class level, that was the first graded stakes for this 4-year-old, and prior to that had been running in optional claimers and N1X allowances. So to say that this is a step up in class is a major league understatement. Does have a positive record at Santa Anita and will be the pace. I don't expect this one to be there late, not in this field, so I'll pass. Warlike Goddess really came back when, frankly, I was kind of ready to write her off at this point. Came back in the Turf Classic and just blew that field away. Wasn't the greatest of fields, and it was yielding turf. But she did demonstrate that she still can run a big race. She ran in this race last year against a pretty good field as well and got a nice third. But I think this field is even better than that. And at 6 years old, she would have to run her absolute career best and beyond that to win this race. And I don't think it's going to happen. Bill Mott on Breeders' Cup Day, you never want to knock, of course. And this is a distance she absolutely loves. 9 times in the money, 7 wins. You can't overlook that. But there are others in this field that I think have a better chance to win this race. I think you could certainly use Warlike Goddess underneath in a 12-1. That's an outstanding price, but I believe that's the extent of it in with the quality of this field being what it is. So from the field, this is what we've arrived at. Auguste Rodin, I think if he's on his game, he's going to be one of the prime win candidates. Again, monitor and see how he's doing this week because he can throw in a clunker. So we got to wonder about that. If he doesn't feel like running, then if there's any indication that that's going to be the case, I'd toss him right away because it's either win or nothing with him. Mostadov looks completely ready to run. The surface isn't going to be an issue. I consider this one to be the prime win candidate and would likely be my pick. King of Steel is a grinder, and I think that means he needs a little help to win this race. I think it's more than likely he can go under, but without having that like big burst of acceleration that the more prominent ones have in this race, I think he's probably more consigned to being underneath. Up to the mark, I just love that last race, and I think he's going to run a big one. Whether it's good enough to win, I'm not certain, but I think he's our best hope to get underneath for sure. Warlike Goddess, the distance is exactly what she wants. I'm just not sure if she can put it all together to put a winning effort in here, but at 12-1, that's an excellent price, and I think you can count on her running a big effort and likely can get underneath. Then for the closers, we've got a couple here, and I'll leave it up to you which one you want to use, but I'm just taking prices here. That's all. Broom, because at Del Mar a couple years ago, did run very well and has been running on softer turf at longer distances, so maybe cutting back to a surface we know that he likes may wake him up a little bit, and at 30-1, it's possible he could outrun his odds. And then Shariar as well, kind of the same thing, has had some time to regroup, has been off for a little while, and with the back class that he has, I think he can raise his game. I'm not sure he's got enough to win, but I think he could very well put an effort together where he's underneath. I don't know that I'd use both of them, but I think one of those offers some really good value for the bottom of the tickets. So that's the Breeders' Cup Turf, and there are some questions about the Europeans that we've noted. So it's an interesting race from that perspective, and it may not fall into line like we perhaps anticipate. And because of some of the little vulnerabilities and little questions, you never know. We may have a result that was unanticipated. So it's good. It makes for a great race. Those are just some great European shippers, and augmented by Up to the Mark. It's a great race, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Hope our analysis helps you with your own wagering strategy, of course, and we'll wish you the best of luck as always. And if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe, and we do appreciate the support. That's it for here. We'll have more postings coming up, so be on the lookout for those. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.